So it's time that we add our navigation bar up here, as well as update our blog list to that one item that we talked about in the last one. There's a lot of reasons for this. Again, it has to do with leveraging the strengths of Angular as much as possible versus coming up with our own sort of custom solution to change the way it's displayed. Now, I shouldn't say that this is the only way to do it. There's probably somebody out there that has figured out how to do these columns very nicely that still allows you to do recent, ordering, filtering, all this stuff. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to keep it simple and make it one list of items that have come up, just like what we've done in Try Django 1.9. If you did that with us, we're going to make our blog look just slightly more like that. So the first thing I want to do, though, is make this navigation stuff. So let's go ahead and make a brand new directive. So we're going to make a navigation directive. So I can just come in this index file here and just put my navigation in here. I don't have it like that right now, but I do want it like that, only because then it's nice and easy for me to look at. The other side of it, too, is then I'm going to go based off of a template that I can change at any time. So one of these templates. That's what I want to do, so let's go ahead and do that. In our utils folder, I'm going to make another folder in here, and I'm going to call this try-nav. I'm calling it try as in the module name. We called it try. That's just what I'm going to go off of versus just nav, because there's already a nav there's already a nav directive or HTML tag that we don't want to override. So try nav is what I'm going to call it, and of course I'm going to make two new files, and that's try-nav.module.js, just like we've seen before with other directives, and try-nav.directive.js. Okay, so just like our other modules, we can just go ahead and copy that, and we'll say try nav. Notice how I did the spacing, that's really important. And then the try nav directive, I can literally copy the other directive that we have. So from, let's say, line 22 up, and paste that in here. And again, the module is try nav. The directive, we're going to call it as try nav as well. And this time we're going to restrict it to E, as in the element. And then we're going to do template URL. And I'm going to just say templates, so /templates/nav.html. And this link stuff, we don't need anything in there. So I'm just going to leave that empty. And I noticed that I didn't put a comma here, so let's put a comma there. There we go. So now that we have these modules all set up, let's go into our index file. And I'm just going to copy this utils1 and paste right below it. And we're going to call try-nav and do all those replacements as we've seen before. Okay. And there we go. Now in our module, we're going to add this try-nav in here. So try nav, okay. And then finally, we want to add in our template. So this is going to be a new file, and we're going to call this try-nav, or we called it nav.html, I think. So let's just stay consistent with try.nav.html, and we'll change our module directive to try-nav.html as well. And where do we get this HTML? Well, of course, we get it from bootstrap.com. So getbootstrap.com. And inside of the components, we're in the nav bar. I'm just going to copy this entire nav bar. I will make the statement, of course, that these drop-down menus are not going to work because of how Angular works and how Bootstrap works. But that's okay. We will fix that later. I'm going to change this brand to try, and that's really all I'm going to change for now. So let's make sure that we can actually do this. Like there's no errors running. So if I refresh in here, no errors happen. That's good. So I'm going to get rid of this other nav, and I'll just do try-nav and close off try-nav, save it, refresh, and now we've got our nav bar in here. Great, so it's a full-size nav bar. We might want it in that container. So let's actually try that out. Let's put it in that container and see what happens. It goes away. So we actually can't put it in that because this ng view is what the routing is doing. The routing actually takes over that. So I'm going to save that. So instead of having that as our container, we're just going to put another div around both of them and use the class container here instead of in this particular div. And that should solve the issue. Save that and refresh, and now we've got our navigation bar in here along, nice and lined up with everything else. If there was some reason that that wasn't working as we'd like, we could also try this. And this is just basic Bootstrap stuff that you could play around with. Notice there's a little bit of extra spacing. The alignment might be just slightly off, so I'm definitely going to keep it how I had it, just like that. Oh, we want to make sure we have all the divs in there. Okay, we refresh, and there we go. So now it's actually showing up. Looks fine. It's definitely getting very, very close to where we want to be. There is a possibility that we want to do column class, column small 12 here to just adjust the spacing ever so slightly, so then the lines of the actual logo text line up with the blog text. So I'll just keep it like that. And again, that's getting your experience with Bootstrap down. But again, if we click on any of these drop-down menus, they don't work. We're not actually going to implement them from working in this one, but there is a way to do it. And it's something called UI Bootstrap, and it's fairly simple, but it's just not something we're going to cover at this time. So now the next thing I want to do is change how this looks and get rid of this old stuff. So inside of our blog list, I'm going to get rid of all of that column stuff that we spent so much time on. Again, there's a very specific reason for it, and that is that we just wanted to show you what you can do with Angular and the power of it. So if I save that, refresh, I now have the ability to run with these items. Since I did that in my blog list, I could totally change how this stuff is in the code. More than likely, you would want to do that. I'm actually going to leave it so you guys can see live code that you can actually play around with and work with without it really interrupting a whole lot. But something I do want to adjust this stuff to is those same sort of columns, or very similar sort of columns as we did before. So I'll change these to a div, and it's going to be that same iteration just as we did with this class here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy from here to here and paste it in and change these items to post in items and get rid of, oops, we actually don't want this div and we don't want that div. All right, so we've got our image, we've got our URLs. A lot of this stuff is actually working correctly. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Our divs are now coming through. They look a little bit better. It's still a little too wide probably. So what I'm going to do is I want to change how wide they are with a class here doing column small 6, column small offset 3. And this should bring us right in the middle, and it does. This obviously presents an issue for pagination and recent, so we want to adjust how those things are coming through as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and I'm going to put it into this column 6, and we'll do column small offset 3 here as well. Paste this in. We're going to add the class of form control. A lot of this stuff's Bootstrap. Refresh. Notice that recent is now coming a little bit wide. Oops, we want to put this inside of this div here. That's why. Save that. We refresh. Now we see that, well, that doesn't look great. We'll fix that in just a moment. The next thing is the pagination, of course. And we're going to go ahead and do a couple things with that. First of all, I'm going to grab those pagination controls and paste them inside of that column. So if I refresh, I should actually see them, but I'm not. So let's see why. I think I know why. I'm going to add div class equals to row here. Oh, I know exactly why. And under post items, so we have post items here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that div off. Close, get rid of that, or let's comment that out. And I'll say no posts found. Okay, and this dir paginate should be inside of a div tag, not a select tag. Close off that div. Refresh, there we go. So now we have the pagination on top, and we can also put it on the bottom, which is exactly what I want to do. And I'll just get rid of those other inputs. There we go. We save that. Refresh, and now it's on the bottom as well as the top. So I can see all of these different things, and I can filter. So new item, I can do all of that as well. The next thing, of course, I could change the blog list as to where that is located, and I might want to just do that. Come in here, save that, and refresh. Change no longer needs to be there, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that because we got rid of those columns. Okay, so the last thing I want to do, just update how these actual forms are coming through. So I want the inputs to be right next to each other versus how they are now. And we do this with input groups. So input groups are allowing us to have our forms ever so slightly, but in fact, we don't need to go that complicated. We could actually put a new row inside of this class. So I'll just say div class row and close that off. And then inside of this row, we'll do div class equals column small 6. Close it off for that input. Same thing for the select tag. And we'll close that off as well. Save that, go back, refresh, and there. Looks a little bit better. So now I can actually filter items, say new item. There we go. I can filter by recent or whatever. But now it's actually starting to look a little bit more like a blog actually would. My navigation stuff, I'm not going to have all of that in there. So let's actually get rid of some things. I don't want the links. I'll just leave one link on the right here. So, and also that search form, because we will keep that in. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this UL. Let's see if that does it. Keep that search form in there, refresh. Those first things go away, and then the link and drop down on the side, we no longer need the link and drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and comment those out as well. Refresh, and there we go. So we now have our search function still in there. Try Angular is basically what we're working with here. And we can change the href to ng-href, and that's going to slash. And this link we can change to blog or list. So we can call it blog, but we actually don't have anything for the blog. So if I do ng-href, I can do /blog, but that should actually take me back to the home page or just to something called not found, which is actually where we'd probably want our blog list. But I'm actually going to do some cool stuff with this as far as recent or popular or something like that. So if you have any questions on what we did here, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.